everybody, this is Dave with the Shepherd School, and today what we're going to do is show you how to make some brass 410 shells out of 303 British casings. And you might wonder why you want to do that. And really, if you make a brass case and you treat it well, pretty much it's going to live forever. You can reload it indefinitely, whereas plastic cases have a shelf life, and 410 is pretty expensive. And so with just a little bit of work, you can save a whole lot of money on making 410 shells. Now, the way this works, or the reason this works is, originally shotgun shell cases were brass cases, drawn brass cases. And the dies to make a brass case are extremely expensive. If you look into swagging, instead of bullet casting, the dies are pretty expensive. That's because you're forming metal under pressure, and you've got to have some pretty exact tolerances. And so when manufacturers were developing ammunition, if they could use the same dies for multiple calibers, then they would, and it's a several step process. And so things like 444, 3040, 303 British, a lot of them used the same, drawing dies to make the tube, and then they have other dies and other machining work to finish up the case to make them different. Okay, so we're just going to show you how to do this. Okay, so here's the stuff we're going to use. Obviously, I've got my 303 cases. These are still wet, they're still drying, but you see there's no primer in there. So when we go out to the range, we're going to have a means to put primers in there. So I've got a Lee hand press with the large tray. I've got some large pistol primers. We're using pistol primers instead of rifle primers because the case is just a little easier for the primer to indent. Okay, as a matter of fact, back in the day, shot shell primers used pistol primers as the primer. If you looked at a shot shell primer, it's got the two pieces. The only difference is the pistol primers did not have the anvils already attached. It just had the cup and the priming compound. That second piece on the shot shell primer contained the anvil. Okay, and there were people that reloaded their own, shot shell primers using these anvilless primers. Okay, so anyway, we've got that. We're going to use some grits. This is just yellow corn grits. The article that I was using, that End Times Report article, they're using cream of wheat. Didn't have any, so we're going to use grits. Little bit of toilet paper, which wasn't in the article, but it was in some other things that I found to kind of stick just a little bit in the case neck to keep everything from falling out. We're not trying to create a lot of back pressure, but I don't want my stuff to fall out as I load it in the gun. I've got a Lee hand press with a universal decapping die and there's no number on it, but a 303 shell plate. Okay, and then I've got a Lee powder measure dipper. The End Times Report article said use 8 grains of Herco. I didn't have Herco, so I looked it up, did a little bit of research. I'm going to use 11 grains, or a little less than 11 grains of red dot. Yeah, I got blue dot here, but I'm going to take red dot with me out to the range. And this dipper is 10.68 grains of red dot. So that's all I'm going to do. And when we get out to the range, I'll show you how. But I'm going to go ahead and prime these ones here, just in case it's a one-shot affair. I'm thinking the annealed ones are going to fireform with the first try. I'm thinking it might take more than one firing for the unannealed cases. If you go on the internet and you just do an internet search for fireforming 410 shells, there isn't a whole lot of information. It all basically points back to the same article. And I'm going to do it a little bit different than the End Times Report article, but not a lot. Okay, here's a 410 barrel off my M6 Scout. And I've got some brand new 303 British cases. I could have used, surplus fired brass, but I'm just going to use new. Okay. Now, you might wonder why you want to do this, because you can now buy 410 brass, brand new. However, this is just a little bit cheaper. Okay. And I put a primer in there. And I've also marked 5 of them. I'm going to do 5 without annealing the case neck, and I'm going to do 5 after annealing the case neck, just so you can see the difference. Now, basically, here's my 410 barrel. My 303 British fits in there pretty good, okay? But when we Fireform it, we're going to put some powder in there and put a filler and shoot it. And the pressure is going to expand this case out and make it fit perfectly for the chamber of my gun. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. The reason that we're going to anneal or heat up the case is because different metals respond differently to heat and to work. Steel, iron, when you heat it up, it makes it, stronger. It makes it more brittle, right? And if you work it, if you've ever taken a wire and you bend it, and it breaks, that's from working it. Well, brass is a little different. If you heat brass, you make it softer. If you move it, if you bend it, if you work it, it gets hard, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to heat up this end of the case to make it softer so that it's easier to Fireform. Okay, now the reason we're doing some that have not been annealed, and that's the ones with the marks, is to see if it makes a difference. All right. Now I've got kind of a jury-rigged annealing system. I've got a pot of water here, and I've got a drill. And I've just got a screw through the end of a bolt, and I've just got some padding to kind of hold this in here, okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat this with a torch as I spin it. Now we have to be careful because we do not want to anneal the rear of the case. We don't want to anneal the head because it needs to be strong so it doesn't rupture, okay? So this might take a little bit of trial and error, and I will tell you, the ones that I am annealing do not have primers in them for obvious reasons. Okay, you can see some heat discoloration marks, but I want to make sure that none of them are down here around the base. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let these suckers dry a little bit, and then I'm going to show you how we put the primers in it. Prime them. Now my Lee primer, I've got this tray, and it holds a whole bunch of primers, a whole box of 100. Just for simplicity's sake though, I'm not going to take that off. I'm just going to feed them in one by one. So here's the primer. I'm just going to center it in there with the anvil up. Turn around. Now for safety's sake, you want to point that away from you because that is an explosive compound. And you just squeeze. And it seats the primer in there all nice. Okay. So here's our rounds. Next stop is the range. Alright, here we are at the range. I've got the rifle that I'm going to be Fireforming the shotshells to. By actually forming it in the gun I'm going to use, I get exactly what I want. I forgot my funnel from the house, so I just went out in the car, got me a piece of junk mail, old postcard, folded it up and put a piece of duct tape on it. Alright, so I've got my powder, put the funnel in there. I've got my powder in there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my cream of wheat, and I'm going to go ahead and plug them up with my toilet paper. Okay? All right, there's my 10 rounds, and so I've got 11 grains of shotgun powder. Then I filled it up with stone ground yellow grits, and then I just topped it off with a piece of toilet paper. The toilet paper just keeps it from falling out. It's not to pack it down. You don't want to pack this down. Okay, so let's see what it does. All right, it blew out the case neck a little bit, but not quite enough. We're going to have to do it again. All right, so it's blew them out a little bit. I'm having problems with that M6 Scout of the heads going past the extractor, so I'm having to manually extract them. Here's my best one and the worst one. Most of them are somewhere in between. Some of them bulged out, some of them just blew the neck out, but it wasn't enough the first time. I'm going to run it through a second time. I didn't see much of a difference between the annealed and unannealed ones, but I think it was because, you know, when I first did it without the funnel, some of them had different amounts of powder, okay? But this does work. I guess if you like this, you can tune into part 2 where we show you how to actually load it and how we size this end, okay? Trim them up a little bit. So until next time, you can always catch online, www.tngun.com.